and I haven't thought about it a lot. It's not one of those things you just talk to people about. In 1990, we set 2 executions, one by electrocution, and then one by injection. The injection process, I had gotten the bill sponsored in the state senate by my uncle, who was in the state senate, to change electrocution to death by injection, making the argument it's more civil. And it was, and that death by electrocution was going to be outlawed by the court. And we couldn't get it passed with just in replacement thereof, so it was an either or. If you were on death row, you got to choose. If you went to death row, you went by injection. So this is the first one. So the electrocution, you're trying to figure out the procedures so that you take another's life in a second or less without disfiguring them in any way and showing respect for the fact that they've given up their life. The injection was different because 2 different people to be executed, very different in their crimes and things, but it's a brand new procedure. No one ever done it. And we didn't have an injection table.
There wasn't a manual or
there was no, that's right. You couldn't go to YouTube and look up a video and figure out what to do.
Right.
So there was no table of contents. There was no manual. So now you're trying to get the medicines so that you can use the pharmaceutical products you can use. You're trying to decide, okay, we're going to be in this chamber, and so what kind of straps and things do you have? There's a viewing room, and I'm going to be in the viewing room to watch this execution take place. And there'll be 10 witnesses. So how do you do that? It was interesting because there had not been hadn't been any executions since '72. We had people volunteering to be witnesses, and that it confused me. I'm like, it was never something I thought would be my duty as Attorney General in the job description to help legally organize an execution and take the death of another by any means. Mm-hmm. And so I've got this team. We're trying to make sure we're doing everything, absolutely dotting every I, crossing every T, because Arkansas is being exposed to the world, not just the fact that we in Arkansas are fulfilling our laws, but Arkansas is being exposed to the world.
Did you have any trouble thinking about carrying it out as your duty as AG, or did you say, it's the law, I've been sworn to uphold the Constitution, I'm supposed to do this? Personally, you might have felt a little differently or had some different feelings? I mean, what was...
I've always been a death penalty advocate. I've always said that there are some actions one can take for which you forfeit your right to live. It's easier to say that than it is to have to fulfill that execution. So yes, it changes a lot. I had members of my team that were the AG's office said, look, you don't want to work on this case because you have personal feelings, you don't have to work on this case. The system of justice has got to be just, so our role, regardless of our personal opinions, is to make it just. And so yeah, and they were talking to the people of the Department of Corrections because there's no manual for them either. The days both those executions occurred, everyone that were inmates stayed in, so they didn't go out and work that day. So that's a whole city. So the city has a great grapevine. Everybody knows what's going on. We were at that time one of the first states to go back to providing executions, so we had a lot of national and international media. We had persuasion groups, people for it, people against it, protesting, yelling back and forth at each other. And so that getting ready for that process, we thought we had dotted every I and crossed every T, and frankly, when we got there, we were still surprised.
What surprised you?
Well, I think we thought this was not a big curiosity. This was an act of responsibility that we had to follow through, the Department of Corrections, the Attorney General's office, the Governor's office. But we never really had, okay, let's all sit down and kind of talk about how we're going to do this. We just know our jobs, we can do it, we'll come in and do your job. So I was there, like at 7 a.m., the execution was at 10 p.m., and you're there all day long. Mm-hmm. And you're still trying to make sure you've got the procedures done absolutely perfectly.
And there's still a chance at this time that a last-minute stay could be
put
forth. Your legal team is still talking.
You're literally, Back in Little Rock, we've got lawyers standing by. If we get a phone call that a court says they want to stay this execution, they're going to respond within minutes or hours to the court saying, no, you can't. There's no reason to. So we're going to fulfill the law of the state of Arkansas. At the same token, at the Department of Corrections, there is in that, it was at least that time, that execution, there's that phone right there that the governor's office can call and stop just before you inject those pharmaceuticals or before you pull that switch on electrocution. And yet, their lawyers coming for on behalf of the defendants. And they're concerned that the defendant now is not in a fit state to be executed. And then there are people who want media interviews and say, we're not doing any of that. And then there are people who are saying, well, the inmates who are there are wondering about the process. And so that's a little disruptive. And for us, it was a long wait. And it's a hushed wait. It's not, well, guess who won the NC2A last night?
You're not sitting around just
nobody's just talking.
Yeah,
it's going to be.
Are you talking to the victims' families too in all of this?
Not at that time.
When do they come into
they come in earlier, and both instances I had family members come to say, my father, in this instance Ronald Gene Simmons, none of his family was left, but people come to say, I know this person, they're a good person, they've changed, they're different. James Edward Swindler had killed a policeman, Randy Bassinet, in Fort Smith, and I had worked on his case as AG. I'd been in the death row and had been introduced to him. Ronald Gene Simmons, I argued a case in the Supreme Court that I won, which cleared him to be executed because
he expedited and gave up his appeal.
He gave up his appeal, and other inmates wanted him to appeal. And actually, he was in protective custody in the prison because some of them were mad, like you're moving up our date. And so, I knew a lot of Ronald Eugene Simmons. I didn't know him personally, but I'd been in rooms with him. But before that, months before that, families come to tell you, say, well, first of all, that's not my job. I have nothing to do with that part. You'll have to take that to the governor's office. Well, you need to tell the governor what to do. It's, no. This is a governor's responsibility. They'll make that decision, and whatever decision they make is correct based on their conscience. What is important on my end of this is to make sure we do this absolutely legal. We do not have one miscue, one mistake, or anything that resembles a mistake.
So the first time you're doing the lethal injection is Gene Simmons is the first one to die by lethal injection. You see for the first time down at the prison system the gurney that he's going to be strapped to. He's going to be dressed in an all white outfit. It has a little bit of religious overtones to it, does it not?
Oh, clearly. But it doesn't. You don't think about that as you're doing the prep. So we walk in there that night. Now, we've been there. I've been there since 7 a.m. I'm walking in there about 9:45. And we know it's set. We know he's being brought into the chamber to be put on the gurney. And it really hasn't clicked till they open that curtain. And there he is, just like this. Hands extended, legs straight, head up, no leather straps necessarily being seen.
Some crucifixion imagery.
Absolutely.
Which would be the opposite of Ronald Gene Simmons.
Yeah.
Really. So.
Yeah. If to deny it would have been impossible.
Yeah.
So then you think, okay, I know the process. The process is these pharmaceuticals will be injected and death will occur in a couple of minutes. He will lose consciousness in a couple of seconds. So, but now it's a different effort. Because now you're not practicing, you're not getting ready, you're not dotting I's and crossing T's, you're not making sure you comply with this or that. And you make sure, because you have to record last meals, you record last visitors, you record the last few days of an inmate on death row, at least in that time, we watched them 24/7. So when they ate, we wrote it down. What they ate, we wrote down. If they turned on a TV program, we wrote that down. What program that was.
What was the purpose of all that?
The idea was to avoid the legal challenge that at some point he was segregated from the population and treated in some fashion or way that would have been illegal.
Gotcha.
Or that somebody in the population, inmate population, wormed their way into that. So it was a completely segregated cell, moved down there about 7 days in advance. And we didn't want that sort of, well, wait a minute, y'all don't know what happened Tuesday afternoon between 4 p.m. and 7 p.m. Yes, we do, to the minute and the second. If he goes to sleep, we write down he went to sleep. If he wakes up and goes to the restroom, we write down. So, but that's a very different place than when they open that curtain and there's that man laying out there, white beard. And you know what's going to happen. First of all, you're going to come upon the anointed time. This time, Lockhart is going to step up and say, here's the order to carry out the punishment of death by injection. Ask for any last words. And the phone sitting over there on the wall. And I mean, it's a very sterile kind of environment. And sterile in the sense that it doesn't seem to be any emotion. And yet what you're looking at is really kind of hard to process, to be real blunt. It's like, oh, okay. And so when Mr. Lockhart says proceed with the execution, the people who are delivering the pharmaceuticals, nobody knows what pharmaceuticals they're delivering. They're just delivering into veins in the arm. So probably 25, 30 seconds, it's obvious he loses consciousness. So there's a doctor there with a stethoscope, and so you're figuring at the end of 3 or 4 or 5 minutes at the most, the doctor's going to go over there and listen for a heartbeat, which is exactly what happened, and it kept beating. And so then you begin to think, okay, and this is what was really hard. You know that this is not a reversible process. So you're either going to cause death or you're going to cause serious bodily harm, but you're never going to have the person you had before this process, because these pharmaceuticals in his system are going to either kill him, bring his life to an end, or so severely injure him in the sense of having that much pharmaceutical in that is killing, that he'll never be the same. It might be a vegetable, might be whatever. So then 5 more minutes pass, and you do it again, and he's still alive. And then 5 more minutes pass, and then you do it again, and he's still. Now we're at 15 minutes, and you're thinking 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 4 minutes, 5 minutes at the best. So then you're thinking, okay, where are we? What have we not done right, or what did we do wrong? And it was. I don't talk about it much, because it's not something I like to relive, but you're thinking, what's happening here? So it goes about 21 minutes. Now, you knew the end result at 2, 3 minutes. It's over. It's not going to be a living human being as the one who was strapped to that gurney ever again, under any circumstance. Heroic efforts, whatever you try, not going to happen. So you think, well, the end is here. But the law says you have to stay there until he is pronounced dead. So you're just sitting there watching death occur. And that's not a pleasant thing to do. Some of the witnesses, it was interesting, because when I got into the room, the witnesses were just being brought in. And so this is the Attorney General. He's here to make sure we follow all the legal procedures. And so I had the ability to shout stop, and could interject if there was something that went really amiss, and
something that wasn't following proper procedures.
Right. And that didn't happen, and I didn't really think it would happen. I was surprised at a couple of the people who were witnesses. They was kind of like, well, hey, what you going to do after this? Going out for dinner, and you're going. Our team had taken, and my office had taken the position that no matter how horrendous the crime, everybody has a right to die with dignity. I just had never thought about that as a state employee. Mm-hmm. So when I held up my hand and put my other hand on the Bible and swear to uphold the laws of the state of Arkansas and the United States, so help me God, and I knew that was the law, that I would be one day in that spot. And then it kind of just flushes through you like those pharmaceuticals flush through that body. Is that, okay, whoa, we are now executors.
Think about it after the execution. I don't know if it was later that night, or was it the next day, or was it a week later? When did you kind of go back to it mentally and kind of process, that was historical, and we took another person's life. I mean, because it was our duty, but we took another person's life. When did that hit you?
That hit me some that night, hit me some the next several days. Over the next couple of months, I think maybe 6 months out, maybe 8 months out, I said, I went to give a Civic Club speech. And I was going to talk about the death penalty and say that, first of all, it's an absolute penalty, and don't ever forget that. Don't think it's something else. Secondly, it only should be applied in the very most unusual of circumstances, in which are the most egregious of actions, for which there seems to be no other proper punishment. So on an incredibly limited purpose, it's got to be applied with dignity. And for the people who have the job of applying it, you should be proud of the people who had that job. They performed their job most admirably. Because the question is, and I told you before we were talking off camera, so Jim Guy Tucker's been involved in this. You talked to him last week. Bill Clinton's been involved in this. You've talked to him or may have. The three of us have known each other all of our lives. We've talked about all kinds of things that we did together, or didn't do together, or thought we should have done together. Not once had any one of us ever said to the other, what'd you think about that execution that night? What'd you think about when we put Ronald Gene Simmons to death? Or what'd you think about... And no, we just never spoken. Never. And that speech was not a good one, and it was not well received. I just said, the people at the Department of Corrections are my heroes. And several people, oh, you're supposed to kill those killers. It's not you're just supposed to kill those killers. It is the state putting itself in the position of being God.